Hi, my name is Miss Dander and I'm here with...
Mr. Amma.
And today we're going to be looking at the poem Neutral Tones by Thomas Hardy. So, Mr. Amma, if we begin by looking at the sort of tone of this poem, I feel like this tone is a very painful and a sort of need for love in this poem.
Yeah, if you look at the poem as a whole, we can see that the poem is about a failed relationship, and the narrator in this poem is quite hurt.
Yeah.
And that tone of hurt and negative and painful is continued from the beginning of the poem
Yeah.
up until the end of the poem.
For example, we start off with the line, "We stood by a pond that winter day," and we end with the line, "and a pond edged with greyish leaves." So there's two things those two lines have in common. Not only is this called a cyclical structure because we start and end in the same place, but the sort of winter day and greyish leaves, they have the same connotations of dullness and negativity.
Yeah, winter can be associated with being cold, so maybe the relationship has gone cold. Winter can also be associated with death, the fact that your body goes cold, and maybe the love between the two has gone cold. And then we finish off the poem with grey. Now, grey is a type of colour that often shows confusion. Grey overpowers a lot of colours, and it also shows a lack of life because we associate leaves to be green, to be bright, whereas he associates leaves with being grey, which means that maybe he's not happy and that he can't appreciate colours anymore.
He says the colour grey again, so in the quote, "They'd fallen from an ash and were grey." Like you said, grey is sort of a confused, it gives that sense of a confusion type of emotion, but also it's very lifeless, and we can tell that he feels, without love, he feels lifeless. There's a lack of sort of positivity in his life when he's not in love.
Yeah, if we look at the first stanza, I believe the third line, where it says starving sod, so we know that this is alliteration because he's repeating the letter S. In this case, you can also say sibilance because it's alliteration of S, but starving sod, so sod is essentially just a piece of soil. I've looked at the word starving, like Miss said before, you can see that he's really lacking love in his life. He's almost starved out of it. And as we know, if you give plant water and you look after a plant, it grows to be beautiful and healthy. And without the love in his life, he's feeling starving without it. And he hasn't grown up to be healthy and happy. He's grown up, or after the experience, he just feels bitter and sad.
Yeah, he does a lot of, I think this poem is full of really great imagery. So he likes to make the reader, everything he says, he wants the reader to see in their own head. He wants them to feel that emotion. That's how we can tell that he's been through something like this himself, because everything he says is so powerful. So for example, the smile on your mouth was the deadest thing. If you just look at the line like that, you might think it's quite confusing because a smile is so different to something that's dead. It's a positive and there's a negative. But in this case, they juxtapose each other because a smile is a happy thing. When someone's smiling, you'd think they're quite happy and joyful. But when it's described as the deadest things, you know there's more to it. The smile's sort of fake.
Yeah, if you get the feeling in the next line where it says alive enough to have strength to die, it just feels like the relationship was on its last legs. Maybe both parties were faking their smiles, but they both knew that the relationship was going to die. And like Miss said, if you do want to get an extra mark or two for context, Thomas Hardy, the author of this poem, also suffered from a lot of failed relationships in his life. And that can be an influence on this poem. If we look at the last stanza, it says, "Since then, keen lessons that love deceives." So we can see from this experience, it's affected him continuously in a negative way. He now doesn't feel love means happiness and feeling joy. He feels that love is deceiving, which means tricking. So he doesn't feel like love is something that he trusts anymore, and because of this failed relationship, he feels like as though he can't trust himself to love anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like overall, Thomas Hardy in this poem has expressed his experience and how he's sort of given us the negative look on love. So normally you have poems that shows how great love is and how things are so good when you're together and they have all this positive imagery. In this case, he wants his reader to understand that there's another side to it. But I think we'll leave it there.
If you do want to compare it, guys, if you want to look at another poem, make sure you focus on poems where the relationship doesn't seem to end well. So one of these poems that we can talk about is Farmer's Bride, where the relationship isn't working on both sides. It's one person pushing more than the other. So that is a good poem to compare to. Like always, just make sure you revise at home and make notes on quotations. But yeah, we will continue focusing on another poem another time.
Thank you.